So I think you'll notice that in the scripture reading for today, you didn't see the words faith or believe at all. And that probably, you noticed that. And Anita and I had a conversation about that because I don't know if you know this, but I sneakily always remove those words and replace them with trust every time we do scripture reading. And I do it on purpose because it's a better translation. And it changes the text significantly to talk about trust instead of talking about faith. And I asked Anita, do you want me to leave it the traditional translation for this service so that it isn't distracting? And she ultimately decided, no, actually, I want you to keep it the way that it is. So I want to start with just asking you, why did you want me to include those changes and change it to trust instead of keeping it as faith and belief?
Well, I think we have become more and more aware of the Bible as a living document as translations are improved and gradually grow in accuracy. We get a much truer impression of what the writers were actually trying to say, because most of us don't read Greek or certainly not Hebrew, that was brought to our attention in the recent movie that we saw, 1949, is that what it was? 46, 47, where the New Revised Standard Version, updated edition, which is what these are from, was brought out many inaccuracies, even though they were trying their hardest. And this one specifically had to do with the use of the word homosexuality in the Bible, which was never really actually there if I can translate. Even though we're used to hearing, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, not if you have trust the size of a mustard seed, if that's what the Greek word really was, then we should hear it the way it really, like the authors intended in the most accurate translation. So we appreciate Andrew's input on that, because we need the best information we can if we're going to understand the Bible.
And so then, what is the role of trust for you? What has been the role of trust for you in the work of healing and the ways that you've come to understand healing and yourself as a healer, and as you said, everyone else in the room?
I think everyone who seeks healing, whether it's physical, whether it's emotional, whether it's a relationship, whether it's lack of understanding, I think has a little or sometimes a big seed of doubt in them that they can, that this can really be accomplished for them. And they also have to have a little bit of trust that it can happen, because that's what starts healing on the way. Trust can be, of course, in God, and hopefully all of us have trust in God as regards healing, even though there always is a little concern, because we're all human and we can't know exactly how our prayers or our trust are going to be answered. Trust in whatever agency is being providing healing, whether it's a doctor in medicine, whether it's a teacher with her and enlightening us as to what modern education theory has to say about whatever we're trying to learn or study, whether it's a psychologist working on a broken relationship. We have to have that bit of trust. Size of a mustard seed, yeah, that's probably about it for a lot of us, but Jesus assures us that that is enough.
How many of you relate to the idea of it was only after you started trusting that you could be healed that you actually were? Does that resonate for some of you? I've noticed that a lot of people really have, I've known people who have really struggled to heal because they ultimately never believed that they could. And underneath that, to me, is actually a deeper spiritual wound, which is the belief that I am not deserving. And how many people have I known, how many people have you known in your life that ultimately on some level just didn't believe that they were worth it, didn't believe they were worth God's time and energy and attention, certainly didn't believe they were worth anybody else's time, energy, and attention. How many people have delayed healthcare, delayed telling someone that something was wrong because they didn't want to bother you? Well, ultimately, there's a spiritual malady in there that is that I'm not worth it. I'm not beloved of God. I'm a second-class person. So tell me about how the gospel, the good news of Jesus, shows up to you, for you, in these stories of healing and this work of healing.
I feel in these stories, and I venture to say we all do, the call of Jesus to be healers. We know that there is so much healing that needs to be done. There are bodies that need to be healed. There is injustice that needs to be healed. There is sadness. There's hunger. There's homelessness. There's our deteriorating world with global warming and the loss of so many creatures on the planet. There's so much healing that needs to be done. And although we appropriately pray to God to guide us and to help us as healers, we're the ones that are here. And it's up to us to be healers, every single one of us.
I like that. I like that. When we were talking about this earlier, we were talking about the difference between fixing and healing. And how often we're tempted to have a posture of fixing problems, fixing relationships, fixing other people's problems, fixing other people's relationships. And we were talking about, well, ultimately, right, fixing as a fixed end point. It has a completed, right? We're done, right? We've gotten back to whatever status we want. And ultimately, I'm not sure that that is such a thing for people. I think we might fix problems. We might fix things in the abstract. We might fix broken toys. Certainly glued a little dolphin back onto a little box like 8 times. I fixed it, but it's still broken. We're saying about we fix problems, but we heal people. And we really need to make sure we're making that distinction. And so then the question is, well, what does it mean to heal? What does it mean to heal someone or to heal something? And I think that is such a particular question for whatever the particular thing is. But when I think about the concept of healing, well, maybe I'll just ask you, how do you know if something has been healed? What does it feel like? What does it look like? What do you notice about it? How do you know if something's been healed?
Brought back to wholeness.
Brought back to wholeness.
Stop hurting.
Stop hurting.
Happy heart.
Happy heart. You can breathe easily.
You'll feel joy again.
You feel joy again. I just like to notice that most of those are about an internal psychological state. Most of those are not about an external possibility, right? Because we know that sometimes things heal and they're not, the function isn't the same. My foot does not work the same after getting hit by a car, and it probably never will. But has it been healed? Sure. Does my life have these possibilities in it now? Is my life defined by this anymore? No. But even sometimes your life is defined by those things, and yet still they can be healed.
Is that different than restored?
That's an interesting question. Is restored really a version of fixing? I mean, what's that parable, right? A man can never walk through a river twice, for both he and the river are forever changed. I think sometimes we have this view that there is a perfect state, and we just keep falling out of it and we have to get back to it. And sometimes our Christian theology gives us this framework to live in, like there was a perfect state, and then we screwed it up. And thank God that God murdered Jesus so that we could have it back, but then we keep messing it up, right? And we talked about this last week when James was up here. But when we frame the world as a thing that's alive, when we frame God as aliveness, then we know that one of the things you notice about things that are alive, they change. And they are perfect in their uniqueness. They are perfect in their particularity. They are perfect in the exact way that they happen to be at the time. And so maybe there's some amazing revelatory gospel that liberates us from perfection, liberates us from purity in moving into this framework and thinking about this being an internal experience rather than just necessarily. So Anita,
Yeah, I just wanted to say, call a little caution on the word ideal or ideal something. It's because, when you do your first degree in the Reiki healing, people walk around and I'm going to heal now this one, and I'm going to heal my mom, I'm going to fix this person. And the first degree is basically for healing yourself. So you just become an agent of spirit. And the person that is being healed becomes an agent of spirit, and then there is spirit. And all of them together sort of heal, but saying, I can heal you, I would never say that. That's so not true.
Sure. And we actually talked about this. The question I was going to ask you was this last piece of scripture. Jesus kind of claps back at the disciples, right? And says, you didn't have enough faith. You didn't have enough trust. How have you made sense of that after we've had a number of conversations about it? I'm curious where you're at.
One of the scary things, perhaps the most scary thing about perceiving that a situation needs healing, or that a person wants healing, or that a world wants healing, or that a polar bear cub wants healing, is if you're going to try to heal it with God's help, what if you can't do it? What if you can't do it? What if, the disciples had tried to heal this epileptic boy and still had epilepsy? I think that I could understand them going to Jesus later and saying, how come you could do it and we couldn't? I'm sure he obviously realized there's a difference between them and him.
I don't think
That's right. But it was scary for them to have tried, and appropriate for them to then go and say, why didn't it work? The hard part is the answer is you didn't have enough trust, and you go, gosh, I could have sworn I did. I just out of trust, really, honestly, Jesus, I do. And the way that I think, and probably many of us make peace with that a little bit, is that it doesn't always turn out the way you think, and it can still be healed. Maybe you can't save that polar bear cub, but you can save other parts of the world that are falling into the sea because the icebergs are melting. Maybe you can't pray hard enough for your dog not to die, but you can remember all the love that you gave him and all the joy he brought to your life, and you can help another dog that needs your help. So there's, to me, what Jesus is saying is, it won't always work out, but don't be afraid to try. Because if you only try things that you are positive you can succeed at, then the world is going to continue to lack your personal ability to work on its woundedness, because You were afraid to try because you weren't sure how it would work out.
It's a great place to close. Let's give her a big thank you.